Hello there, and welcome to the I Never Knew podcast, also known as Inc. This show dives into the life experiences of people who have been through it all and have come through the other side stronger, better, and triumphant. Each story is raw, authentic, and, at times, heartbreaking. One thing joins it all together: the fact that the stories can help the listener learn and grow. Hosted by life coach Maureen, she sits down each episode with a new guest who will empower the listener to set out on their self-discovery journey and start to heal. Now you'll be joined by Maureen and her special guest. Please enjoy the show.
Everyone, and welcome to the newest episode of I Never Knew But My Dog Did podcast. I am Maureen Scanlon, or Life Coach Maureen, and I'm so thrilled to be with you here today, and I'm so grateful that you're listening. Once again, I have a fabulous guest, and it's an interesting story how we met. It was on Facebook, and I don't even know how we connected, mutual friends or not mutual friends, but I started seeing his story, and he touched my heart so much, and I reached out and said, oh my gosh, I'm just so touched by what you're going through, and my heart is breaking for you. So today, my guest is Matthew Jarrett, and Matthew had his life changed forever on Valentine's Day 2017. The following 2.5 years leading up to his wife's death would test his strength, his spirit, and his faith in ways he never imagined. And he says he would fail at every turn. But from failure comes growth, resolve, and just maybe great and lasting change. And mic drop on that one. So during her illness, and we'll tell you what her illness was, he started a blog and about the journey that they had together, and just each day. It was really neat to see him. Really, we were in the journey with him, and the pictures that he would post and stories he would post. So its initial stated purpose was to chronicle the eventual triumph over the diagnosis, and it evolved into a deep look into his decline and eventual collapse. The diary of a caregiver who failed his charge by failing to care for himself. Then it became the story of rebound, recovery, and finally dealing with her death and beyond. And that's really the epitome of what this is, which is I never knew. And we just don't know when we're going through these heartbreaking stories and moments and experiences, how it's later going to be for our good, because it doesn't feel like it in the moment. So without further ado, welcome, my friend Matthew.
Good afternoon. Good morning. It's morning here, isn't it? Yes. I'm so confused. I've lived in every time zone in the last couple of 3 years, and it's difficult for me to keep straight still.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you lived in Arizona, you sort of wouldn't have to worry about that, although we have to accommodate every single other person in the country. So
apparently this is our last time change here in Oregon. Right, we're not going to be doing it anymore either, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. They're doing away with it, so everyone's going to get on board with us here in AZ. So, as I always do, we start off with the knee moment, the moment that brought you to your knees on that Valentine's Day in 2017. So, tell us the beginning of the journey and what happened.
Well,
good timing. Oh my God.
I'm not paying attention to other people. Excuse me, baby.
Oh my God, sweet baby. He came into the frame. I mean, that was not a coincidence at all. He's like, here, let me give you some strength before you start, Dad.
There we go, baby. What a good girl. What a good girl.
You gotta get there. I love it.
That was I'm sure Cinders will be in here sometime.
30 weeks. 31 weeks from tomorrow is August 2nd.
Valentine's Day of 17.
She's already 7
that
weeks.
She's
already 8 weeks.
The first sign of the illness, but that was the over the cliff day.
We need to get
underlying some of it, she had kidney issues for a long time. She would get kidney stones 2 or 3 times a year, really badly, and she did ended up with a diagnosis of a chronic kidney disease. She just wasn't processing things properly. and she wouldn't drink water. So that was a big effect with that as well, or a big part of the cause.
Yeah.
But excuse me, I was selling cars at the time, and I worked a long day on Valentine's Day of 17, which was a Tuesday. It was what they call in the car business my bell to bell, my open to close day.
Mm.
So I worked a long day, and there's some irony in here because you've been familiar with my artwork for a while as well, and I had been doing working on a gift for her for Valentine's Day for quite some time, which was a portrait of the two of us together. I took a favorite photograph of mine, which had been taken at a family reunion of me with two of my nieces, and I took my image out of that and her image out of her favorite photo of her, and I merged the two and did an illustration of that. Yes, baby, I know. But I had gotten up, as had been my habit. I'd gotten up very early in the morning to do some artwork before I went to work.
Mm-hmm.
But she had been just a few days earlier. She had been diagnosed with another kidney stone, so she was on the antibiotics and taking the yogurt, eating the yogurt to fight the antibiotic effect in the gut and everything else. And she was having a rough morning of it. But I gave her Valentine's Day present that morning, which was the drawing that I had done. Lola, please. But she's very jealous. You can't notice that. You can't guess that. But
attention.
Anybody else getting attention is never a good thing. But I went to work and left her at home with instructions and everything else, and it turned out to be a very long day at work. I wasn't able to come home for lunch. Work was only 3 miles from home, so I often would come home for lunch and check in and all that. But it had been a packed day. I sold 3 cars that day. It was a very, very packed out day. I ended up staying at work over an hour late to finish this very last deal that I was on. And I got home, and she was a mess. It's a little bit graphic, a little bit TMI, but it is what it is. I got home, and she was still in bed. She had messed herself. She hadn't eaten the yogurt or anything. She was so disoriented that when I went to get the yogurt to help her eat, she would reach for the spoon and miss, and then wince as though missing had caused her pain. So her brain was completely misfiring. I packed her into the car and ran to the emergency room, and it turned out she had the kidney stones. She was septic. She was in sepsis. Yes. And we, of course, they did the MRI, and they got all the photos of the stones. Turned out that she had an 8 millimeter stone blocking the exit from her right kidney. So she couldn't process anything at all.
7,
and that
0,
kidney
6
was found on closer examination. The MRI had 30 stones.
Oh,
I
had been basically killed. That kidney was non-functional, and the right side also had a blockage, and she couldn't process anything. So all of the dirty blood and everything had sent her into sepsis and into what every time you go into the ER in situations like that, they do a stroke test. Their first thought was she was having a stroke.
Yeah.
They ended up, of course, they took her into surgery, and they put a stent in to drain the poison and everything. We were in the hospital for 2 days at that point, and then home, and then we had to go to the urologist after that to get the stent removed and the kidney stone destroyed. So it was 4 days after her initial hospitalization. That would have been the 18th. That we went back to the hospital to get we went to the urologist to get the stone removed and everything else. 2 hours after that, she's back in the ER in sepsis again. Oh. Apparently, some of the infection was buried in the stone. They lasered the stone up.
let it go, let it out. And just for our listeners with my medical background, just to make this clear, so sepsis is a blood infection. So basically with her kidneys, because your kidneys are the filter of your body, and your kidneys will filter out all of the toxins out of your body. With her having so many stones and not being able to filter that, the toxins out of her body, then it unfortunately ended up in the blood because it wasn't getting filtered. And then to not be able to release that from either kidney, it's going to go from, a UTI to pyelonephritis to then now your body is saying, hey, I've got this infection and I can't clear it out.
To what?
And I
A
will
kidney
say
infection.
this is an interesting thing that I want to ask you.
Thank you.
My grandmother had dementia and then ended up
Some of us don't know these
Alzheimer's. And when she would get a UTI, she would have
That's what I was
symptoms of
saying. I said
dementia
to those
before we
people
even
who don't
knew
know with my
that
medical
she had
background,
Alzheimer's. So it's really
But what's
interesting how
pyelonephritis?
those
pyelonephritis
UTIs
is a
really
kidney
affect
infection.
Yeah, but we don't know that.
your mental
Just spit it
capacity.
out.
So
That's how I'm
the dirty
explaining
blood's
it.
getting to your brain.
yep. So I want people to be aware of that, the caretakers that, keep up on those UTIs and look at that urine, and even they have test strips you can order. So if you do have a loved one you're taking care of, make sure you keep those UTIs under control and get that before it builds. But those stones, again, there's no way of knowing that. So how was her mental state during all of this? I imagine she was just
There had been signs of decline prior to this.
okay.
Things that denial is not just a river in Egypt. Okay, and we were all aware of that. And
He's great.
having been
Here's my buddy. Can you hear it? Can we turn it up?
Having been such a powerful
It is plenty loud for the rest of it.
She was an incredible force for what she did professionally. She had designed.
She was amazing. Listen,
and trained surgeons in the use of endoscopic surgical instruments.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
She had been quite the valued intellect in that industry for quite some time, and had started up. She was on the initial startup of Ethicon Endosurgery, which is now a Johnson & Johnson subsidiary. They had started it up and then sold it to J&J. She worked at that point time strictly for the options when they sold the company.
Wow, how amazing!
So she had been, her life had been built around her intellect. So
very intelligent.
There was a great deal of anger and denial and difficult to process emotions around that. And I had spoken to our doctor about it, and her doctor at the time, and he did in my opinion, a horrible thing just about 4 or 5 months before all of this unfolded in February. And that was, excuse me, I apologize. But I had COVID a couple of weeks ago, and I still have a little bit of a cough.
Oh.
But in my concerns for her cognitive status, I had expressed my concerns to her doctor. And rather than trying to take some subtle way of discussing this with her or something that evinced any compassion on his part, we went to an appointment in his office, and they basically ambushed her. They had a social worker, an RN, and him in there, and they basically cornered her and tried to give her this MOCA test, which is the dementia test. The Montreal Cognitive Assessment is what it stands for. But they basically just ambushed her, and just I mean, they're all of a sudden we go in, we're supposed to be a checkup, ostensibly a checkup for the frozen shoulder that she was just finishing dealing with, and all of a sudden she's just got all of these people pounding on her trying to get this. So naturally, what it did was create a reaction as opposed to get a sample, a realistic sample of her cognitive abilities. It created a panic state, and she locked down and froze up, and she went into a complete shutdown mode. And of course, that affected her trust of me for quite some time.
Can't blame her, you know.
It was a horrible experience. But
oh gosh, Matthew, that just absolutely hurts my heart. You know, coming from being a nurse and a caretaker myself like that. that lack of compassion. It's just something I'm so passionate about, is like, don't be in that field if you don't know how to, take care of a patient, not just physically, but also, mentally and emotionally.
He was that typical generation ahead of you and I, that medical doctor who, and this is one of the problems I have had with MDs over the years, is that once they're a medical doctor, they're pretty much done educationally. But nurses, for example, have continuous ongoing education in order to stay certified and everything. And that drove, when I eventually sought out another doctor for it, that drove me to look for a nurse practitioner.
Yes. And you know who else is who does that continuing is the DOs. The DOs are constantly keeping up on that. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I want the listeners to understand her age, because this was a unique younger diagnosis. This is so, to see those cognitive signs at such a younger age. So how old was she at that time?
57.
Yeah. And that's definitely, they call it an early diagnosis in your 50s of Alzheimer's, because that's not really normal. And so a lot of us, I'm in my 50s, I'll be 53, and you forget things, right? And we're like, oh man, I'm getting dementia. No, what's the difference between me forgetting something on my grocery list or forgetting my list at home versus what you saw as signs early on?
The difference in what I saw in Jacqueline were they weren't really memory related. They were trying to figure out a way to word it which doesn't hurt so badly. But I guess that's kind of the point of it. But they were changes in her general behavior. We went for a different medical reason entirely. I told you she had the frozen shoulder, and her inability to respond to the physician's questions in an interactive manner, to obey instructions. He's telling her to move her arm here and here and side to side, and she's not comprehending the instructions as they came across.
Okay.
She lost her ability to write. She could no longer sign her name. She had one of these things, beautiful penmanship at her, and to see that as it progressed, again, hindsight being 2020, that was a sign, of decline. I apologize.
No, you're okay, honey. Don't worry about it.
But there were things which were causes for concern, but which were easy to. I mean, they weren't things which scream dementia at you. There were things that make you think, okay, there's an issue of some sort here that has me concerned. But then you go 4 months with just this joyous, bubbly, completely interactive person that you've grown used to, and these things get, they just, well, that must have been just an aberration or a figment of my imagination or whatever. It's very easy because we don't want to see these things, Maureen.
I know.
Nobody wants to see this person, to imagine this vital part of their lives as going through what was happening.
Yeah, you're losing them before you're losing them. And, we tend to make excuses for things that we don't want to see and that we don't want to feel.
It's a very easy pattern to fall into.
Yeah.
And one for which I would later punish myself relentlessly. Had I acknowledged this earlier, had I died, not from under the computer, had I been more honest with myself and less willing to just dismiss things, it would take me a long time to realize that no, it would not. This was her path.
Yeah. Good for you.
Beat himself up for that.
Backtracking a little bit, when we first went to the hospital on Valentine's Day in 2017, the doctor came out and had the conversation with me prior to surgery. They were prepping her for surgery. And he said, Mr. Jarrett, I need to be completely honest with you. You need to know this going in. your wife has about a 25% chance of coming out of this.
Oh,
The sepsis is incredibly advanced, and there's about a 75% mortality rate at this level. So you need to understand that going in. This is a very, very bad situation.
And she's
So
probably
it all went
unconscious at
very,
this
very
point.
well.
You're
When
not
she came
saying
out after the
goodbye.
surgery, he said it went as well as it possibly could
No,
have.
she was still alive.
If it's like, if she wakes up from the anesthesia, then we're out of the woods for now.
wow.
And he said that we got it quickly enough if that's the case, and I think it will be okay. He said there are the underlying problems. She's going to live with one kidney from now on because the right kidney is no longer going to function. It's dead. It is about 1/3 the size of the left. It has shriveled and reduced in size. It is something that we're not gonna. There's no reason for us to go in and remove it.
Beautiful.
It's not
You
toxic
pile
to
them
her
up,
at
I'll
this
take
point
them.
in time. It has shut itself off. It has shunted all responsibility to the other side, and she'll just live the rest of her life with one kidney.
Wow.
Which many people do. Kidney transplants, things of that nature. I offered myself as a obviously if she needs one, I've got two. Well, she's got one too, so that will be fine for now. But you understand that at this point in time, there's 25% that she's going to. Did
you notice about Amazon bag?
That same step when we went in after
You turn it inside out
was lasered up and the infection blossomed. But it looks like she's worse now than she was 4 or 5 days ago when she was in here with this last situation. The blood is incredibly toxic. The infection again, we can't confirm that it was lasering the stone was what caused it, but that's the only real conclusion is that infection was embedded in that stone. When they pulverized that stone, that re-released that infection, but it was a mature infection at that point in time, and it blossomed in the blood like a weed.
Yeah.
So she was 2 hours after getting that stone removed, she was as sick as she had been after almost a week of treatment for that stone and the infection prior. So yeah, it was 2 trips to the ER, which mathematically she should not have come out of.
Yeah, but she did. She fought it. She fought it.
She did. And that time, after that second septic event, we were in the hospital for 6 days. And it took a long time to get her back to interacting with people at all. And it was at that point in time, again, I had been, when you're with somebody all the time, gradual changes are more difficult to notice. And we had been together for 16 years at that point, 18 years, from 1999. And we'd been living together since 2002, and it was see her all the time. So gradual changes are more difficult to notice. I helped her for the first time in all of this. I helped her because I stayed with her in the hospital. They gave us a room. They gave me a cot, and I stayed in the hospital room with her the whole time. Just going home to take care of the dog because I couldn't take the dog to the hospital. And actually, I apologize before we get back. But just going home to eat and bathe and come back and her there. But it was helping her to the bathroom while she was just in the hospital and everything. That I was shocked and just blasted by how much weight she had lost. This was a woman who, most of our time together, she had battled her weight, and she had been in that 170 to 200 pound range for most of their relationship.
170 to 200 pounds their entire marriage.
But I had been very busy and I've been myself for a long time. But how shocked me how thin she was, and it was then that I realized what I had missed and what her condition was, and since I worked 12 to 14 hour days in the car business, you're not making any money if you're not there, and I did overwork, and I worked a lot more hours than I should have. freely open to that. But she wasn't working, so making all the money out of it was a very nice thing. That's my experience anyway.
Oh, it's the truth. It's facts. I mean, we have bills that we have to pay, so definitely.
But it was a shock to me to see it like that. It was an eye-opening thing. And we were in the hospital for 6 days at that point in time. And when she was finally alert and aware enough to go home and could walk around on her own, I took her home. And the very first day I took her home, it was earlier in the day. It was like 10 a.m. when we left the hospital. And take her home, and she's exhausted, of course. So I pack her upstairs and I lay her down for a nap. And I go downstairs and I'm watching something on the television. And I hear her moving around upstairs. A couple of floorboards that creak, that's why I hear her moving around upstairs. And all of a sudden I hear her voice, but it's not her voice. I hear her say something from upstairs. Says, "Why are you watching that?" A very, very upset tone of voice, a very, judgmental, very non-Jacqueline tone of voice, combative even. And I start, and she's at the top of the stairs looking down on where I am, below. So I get up and I go upstairs and I see how she is, and she pulls back from me. And over the course of a little bit of conversation, I'm trying to feel her out, figure out what's up. I realize that she sees dozens of people in this house. She thinks there's a party. There's a lot of people here. And I slowly realize that she doesn't know who I am. She's seeing all of these things and all of these people, and she's not seeing me. And it was her first psychotic break, her first full-on dementia experience of just not knowing what was what, where, a full-on hallucination. I'm trying to be very gentle with her and walk her back to the bedroom. I sit her down on the bed, and she's nervous. She doesn't really completely know who I am. She sees, there's a little bit of recognition in her eyes, but she doesn't trust me. And so I'm trying to be, again, I'm confused. I don't know what the hell is going on at this point myself. And I'm terrified for what I'm seeing. I'm terrified for her. And I take her back to the bedroom, and I sit her down, and I'm just trying to talk gently to her. And she's not there. And finally, I just, in an act of desperation, I just shouted. I said, "Jacqueline, wake up!" And she was there.
Wow.
And she looked at me, and she knew me. She knew who I was at that moment. And she looked at me, and she said, "Matthew, what is happening?"
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't know. I had no idea. I mean, I hadn't thought of Alzheimer's. I didn't. What the hell, And this psychotic break or whatever you want to call it, it was the first of what would be many.
Wow.
I ended up. I called the hospital. I called the social worker at the hospital and discussed. And we ended up just trying to talk through it and figure out what was going on. And we had another one the following day. It got really, really bad the next day. She had another one like this, and it was a bit more dramatic, believe it or not. I could tell that she was detached. That she was in this kind of mode where, and again, brand new to these things, so it was difficult to fathom what was really going on. But she was wandering about the house, and she was looking for a way out, for one of the better terms. So I'm trying to distract her, trying to keep her in the house. I'm on the phone with the social worker, trying to get some advice as to how to deal with this. And finally she got out of the house through the garage or through the laundry room, which was right into the garage.
JJ Watt's retiring.
And I had to
the defensive end on the Cards.
Yeah.
Because
Why?
we back up
He
against
has
the major
kids.
highway.
I think he wants to spend time
So
with
she
them.
could just,
He's been playing for 12 or 13
backyard,
years.
through the
He's
garage,
like
through the backyard.
35.
So she's going to crawl. She's going to wander into the middle of the street and get smashed by a car. So I'm trying to keep her in the garage, but in order to do that, I had to physically restrain her. And then she's screaming rape, and she's screaming fire, and she's crying for help. And just directly across the street is her friend Joyce, who is really her best friend in the world. So I get on my phone and I call Joyce, who is at that point in time, Joyce is dealing with a husband with a terminal cancer diagnosis, and she's buried into taking care of him. But I call her on the phone and I just ask her to come out for help. Can you possibly come out and help Jacqueline? And she does. She runs out, and as soon as Jacqueline sees her, she runs to Joyce for help. She knows Joyce. She doesn't know who the hell I am. So while Joyce has her and Joyce is calming her down, I call 911. I've got to get some sort of help.
Yeah.
The police come, the ambulance comes. Of course, by this time, the entire neighborhood is out in the street watching, trying to figure out what's going on, and it's a spectacle, and which is the last thing you want. The tension in this sort of situation is the last thing you want.
Yeah.
But the paramedic comes and talks to me, and I explain the situation, and they go and talk to Jacqueline, and they do you know who Matthew is? And of course, Matthew, love Matthew. Matthew takes care of me and everything. Well, do you know this gentleman over here? Bad. So she knows who Matthew is, but I'm not Matthew.
Wow.
No,
Just
associated. I was trying to keep her prisoner in the house. And I'm bad. So they take her, and I'm talking to the social worker on the phone get them back on the phone, and to their advice, and it feels like I'm the trigger of whatever's going on. So they say,
which is a bad thing.
I know.
Let them deal with her. Let them get her calm, and don't go to the hospital yet.
Okay.
So I hang back. I let them take care of
That
her.
would just kill you, wouldn't
I
it?
do go eventually.
It'd be a terrible day.
A couple hours later, and they don't take me in to see her because again, she's like him bad. And I leave all the information and everything else. I talk to the nurses there. Late in the evening, I get a phone call. All I hear in the background is her screaming. All I hear is her screaming, and the nurse saying, "Help us! She's out of control. Can you come and help us calm her down?" So again, it's the hospital is 5 miles from my house. I must have gotten there in 3 minutes. I didn't even have my pants on yet when I got in the car. I was putting them on in the parking lot between the car and the hospital.
Since I got to go to the counter.
And I get into the room, and she recognized me at that point.
Yeah.
So I was calming.
Well, you didn't just drop that one in.
Those several days were that was all inside of a week.
Okay.
And it was just over a week from with that initial hospital stay, and then 4 days or 6 days afterwards. So we're in a 10-day window this whole time. We go from her having a kidney infection but being otherwise Jacqueline into this.
Wow.
So it seems like this. Obviously, there had been build up to it, but we would eventually figure out through some of the specialists. We would eventually see that it became very, very much the theory, at least, that these sepsis events did enough damage cognitively to help the Alzheimer's surface much more quickly and take control much more quickly than it would have. Without the kidney infections, she may have been
it's no trouble at all.
daunting idea. She may have been a normal Alzheimer's patient. This existed in her, but she may have been in her 70s or so before it surfaced and took over.
I'm going
because of these drastic cognitive effects of the two sepsis events, it accelerated that process, or at least that was the theory we wound up landing on. That turned out to be the keystone that popped out of the arch and
Even
caused
if I
everything
just
to
get like a
collapse
different necklace,
10,
you know,
15,
I still
20 years early.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay, so fast forward, we end up where you're not able to keep her in the home, and we do have to put her into a long-term care facility. Did you put her into a memory care facility?
It was a memory care wing of a nursing facility.
Yes.
Okay.
So it was not a dedicated memory care facility, but it was a dedicated wing inside that facility.
Okay. Well, and I worked in I actually worked in an Alzheimer's unit, and the irony of you and I being able to talk, and that, trying to get out, we had to have, it was a locked unit because they want to leave, and they want to get out, and they feel like prisoners, and the combativeness is very common. I mean, I was slapped many a time by patients, and I don't think, if anyone if listeners, you aren't familiar with Alzheimer's or dementia, it's so hard to see this person, because my personal experience with my grandmother, the same thing. The first time she didn't recognize me, it just broke my heart, because my grandma was my best friend, and throughout my life, like a second mom to me. And it's devastating the way that Matthew is explaining this, that realization that this person that you've been with, you never think your loved one will not recognize you. And that trauma alone, I mean, it was hard for me to go visit my grandmother when she didn't recognize me. It was just too hard for me to go see her. And so what you did for your wife, so we end up getting her into this long-term care facility, into the memory care wing. And Matthew, I love this part. I want you to tell the listeners how you helped her throughout this journey, and the compassion and love, and how sweet. If my husband could be that way, if something should happen, I would be so blessed. It was the most caring thing I've seen. So tell us what you did when she was in the facility.
There was a lot leading up to taking her to the facility, but in both good and bad. And I'm sure you've read. I mean, you kept up with the blog when I was writing it and everything else. And there was a lot of trauma in there, in which I failed to take care of myself, which resulted in failing to take proper care of her. But when it was in May of 19, we had Sky by that point in time, and we were actually in the car. We were going to a dog park. We were on our way, because there had been an event at the dog park we normally go to, where we were no longer welcome there, because I don't know how familiar you are with dog parks. I don't know, a lot of people don't take their dogs to one, and I understand that now.
Yeah.
But there's a kind of a foyer or a breezeway at the dog parks, and where there's one gate where you go in, and there's another gate where you go into the park, the little staging area there. We went in, Jacqueline and Sky and I, into the staging area, and someone hadn't closed the previous gate, the gate that goes into the park itself. And Jacqueline, probably very much like you, is a magnet to dog love. Okay, they see her and they just want to love on her. But at this point in time, she was very, very frail. My 5'10", 200-pound bride is now 5'6", 115 pounds, and super, super frail, poor balance.
Just been a shell.
All of these dogs swarmed her. They weren't attacking her. They wanted to love on her, but she's frail, and they knocked her down and against the fence. And Sky lost his damn mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Sky was a pit bull mix, about 75 pounds, but he physically picked up and threw a Irish deerhound off of Jacqueline, and he was a Tasmanian devil between her and those other dogs, and got between her and threw a bunch of them off of her and scared the rest of them away. But that broke something in him. He couldn't be trusted around larger dogs after that. He see a larger dog, he went to attack mode instant. He was great with small dogs. He was absolutely great with small dogs.
Either
his size or bigger,
would have
he
been
would have
protective.
aggression too,
Just-
because that it put him in that
Brody would have done
protection
that.
mode, just like that.
Yeah.
So we were no longer welcome at our regular park, and we wanted to find places that were more sparsely populated, less used. So we were going to one that we'd heard of, and we were on our way up there. And in the car, on the way to the dog park, she had another break. And it went from us having a conversation about where we're talking the dog and listening to some music on the radio to just like that. She's a 12-year-old girl, and I have taken her from her parents. That was where her mind retreated to at that point in time. She tried to get out of the car as we were going down the highway.
Oh.
So I did the only thing I could. I mean, I turned around, I went home, but I was afraid to try to get her out of the car because she would try to escape. She would think I'm taking her back in to try and keep her prisoner or whatever. So I sat in the car and I called 911. And they came out to the house. They when they arrived, I got out of the car and just let them take care of her. I got myself out of the picture because she was terrified of me. I took Sky out of the back seat and let them. Again, Joyce came out to help. By this point in time, Joyce's husband had passed, and she had fallen into my helper as Jacqueline's caregiver. She was the only. I mean, Jacqueline's family's in Virginia and Texas, and doesn't give two shits in a windstorm about her to begin with. Pardon my language. And so it's the two of us out on the island, and Joyce was the only help we had whatsoever.
Wow, what a blessing!
But Joyce came out, and we had wound up in the hospital, and she was in sepsis again. She had another kidney infection, and she went she went into a coma not long after she arrived at the hospital, and she was in a coma for 10 days. And turned out the coma was created by the imbalance in her kidney numbers. They could not get her numbers to balance, and they ended up trying running a bunch of different tests and trying a bunch of different remedies for it. They finally got her values back to level, like I said, about 10 days in, and she started to regain consciousness slowly. And they eventually told me, I said a couple of things. It is amazing the level of care you've taken of her at this point in time, but you're done. We're not going to let you take her home again. She's not safe in that environment without 24/7 care, which, yes, you've been providing, but one person can't do that alone. And it had already, as you're aware, had already almost killed me.
Yeah.
And they
tell us about that. Tell us.
You gotta go to the store.
Because I think as caregivers, we just focus so solely on that and not realize that we're not taking care of ourselves. We can't be good for them.
I did not take care of myself, Maureen. This goes back. It would be 3 years ago today, or yesterday. 3 years ago yesterday, that I was released from the psych ward at Good Sam Hospital in Cincinnati, Ohio. On the 14th of December, she had had a break, and it was typical. These things were happening pretty reliably several times a week, and I would do what I could. Sometimes I would get her brother on the phone, whom we had reestablished a relationship with, and he would help talk her down a little bit, or Joyce would come over and help talk her down a little bit. But at this point in time, and I had a bit of a breakdown myself a few days earlier, where I'd had a little bit of a panic attack. And I'd actually spoken to my sister a little bit, and she had asked me, very straightforward, very blunt, that, have you been keeping up with your meditations? And self-care not being a priority, I scoffed at that and just dismissed it. More the fool I, obviously. But I'd had this issue, and I had a little bit of a panic attack, and I was worried about myself and my ability to care for her. But on the morning of the 14th, she had a pretty bad break, and in trying to help her down from this, I had one. I had a bit of a breakdown in the middle of her breakdown, and she came out of it, and she ended up helping me deal with mine.
Oh.
But it was dealing with her issues. As I was having this break as well, I had what I remember. I can only tell my perspective of it, okay? Because what I remember is through the fog of whatever was happening to me at the time.
Yeah.
But she was having her break, her event, however I referred to it at the time. And I had taken her by her arms, I guided her down, and I set her down on the bed and knelt down in front of her to try to talk her down and try to keep her calm. All the while, I was spinning more and more out of control myself. And she claimed, again, I don't remember it this way, but there's no way for me to know. She claimed that I grabbed her and threw her down on the bed, as opposed to my way of guiding her to the bed and setting her down.
Right.
So, well, she claimed that I hurt her, and that, as frail as she was at that point in time, that would undeniably have hurt her.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question that if I did that, it was painful to her and scary for her as well.
Sure. And
So-
for you, I mean, I can imagine for you being like, oh my gosh, I can lose control and not know it because this buildup of what I've been going through, you had no release. It was
I
just
had
this.
no release, and I had no idea what I had done.
Yeah.
And I eventually got calm enough I called Joyce again. I called across the street, and this was fairly early in the day. I'm still wearing my pajamas, you know. Jacqueline wears the same kind of clothes all the time. I don't change her to day and night clothes, you know, unless she asks me to.
Yeah.
Because she's got issues with going to the restroom and everything else, and the better ease of access we have, the better off we are.
Right.
But I called Joyce and asked her to come over to help with Jacqueline. And she comes over, and Jacqueline goes crying to her, and at this point in time, Jacqueline's a little bit more into a bit of she's reacting to what had happened, and she's in panic mode herself.
Yeah.
And she's crying to Joyce that Matthew hurt me, and I'm upstairs while she's downstairs talking to open concept home, so there's no like walls or anything between us. So conversations are going back and forth, and I'm talking to Joyce, and Joyce asked me to come down and sit with Jacqueline, and I'm like, I'm afraid to. I don't want her to be afraid of me, and I'm afraid of what might have happened.
Well, it could be happening right now.
I don't know
It's happening right now
who
for
I
somebody
am
going
right
through
now
this.
or what I might have done.
Yeah.
So I get dressed, and I asked Joyce if she's okay if I just go take a walk. I need to fresh air. I need to get out of the house. And where we lived was again, there's a major highway behind the house, big major auto mall and shopping center at the other end of our. You can walk to it through our housing addition. Just walk through a back gate there, and you're in this business complex and auto mall, shopping mall area. So I take that walk, and I'm walking down by there's a Costco there and Target and all of this other stuff. And I realize in the middle of this that it's Friday afternoon in December, in the height of Christmas shopping season, and I'm walking down the middle of the damn road. And so what I'm thinking, what I'm trying to accomplish by walking in the middle of the traffic and people honking their horns at me, I'm terrified to contemplate. You know?
I was gonna say, you know, it would not be a far-fetched or unsurprising thing to say. I want to end it all right now. I cannot handle another minute of this.
I'm quite certain that's where my brain was at the time. I wasn't thinking that, but that's where my brain took my body at that point in time.
Yeah.
And I walked home, and as soon as I got home, Joyce left. She left me there with Jacqueline. As soon as I got home, and I got on the phone and I called 911, and I said, hey, I explained the situation to them. I said, I don't know how safe she is with me because I don't know if I hurt her or not. I don't know if I'm a danger to her.
Wow.
So they came, the police first, And the police searched the house for a weapon, and there's nothing there other than kitchen utensils that might be weapons. And they went up. I gave them permission to search for guns or anything else in the house because I know there's nothing there. And they found nothing. And they said they took me outside, and they were talking to her. By this point in time, she's about as calm and reasonable as she ever gets. She's pretty advanced into the Alzheimer's at this point in time, so she's not really sure of what's going on.
Yeah,
but she's pretty calm as far as what as calm as you could possibly hope for in the circumstances.
Yeah,
she's dealing with it as best she can.
This is Dennis.
They the ambulance finally arrives. They're going to take me to the hospital.
Oh, hey,
for
Jason.
evaluation for
What can I help you
all this stuff. And pardon me. And they're going to leave Jacqueline home.
Oh, geez.
And can't leave her alone.
No.
Can't leave her alone. I try getting a hold of Joyce. She's not answering the phone at home. She may have gone out. She may have. She said something. I think when she left me with Jacqueline, she had to go to the post office and do some other things. So she hadn't just gone home across the street. She had left.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nobody to watch Jacqueline while they take me to the hospital. So Jacqueline has to go with me.
Oh boy.
So we're in the ER at the hospital, and they do an interview on me, and it's again, I'm a little bit disconnected from events. I'm answering questions. I'm worried about Jacqueline. I'm focused on her. Next thing I know, I'm in scrubs. I've got none of my own clothes or my own possessions in my presence. And they're telling me that I am on an involuntary 72-hour cycle. Basically, I'm under arrest.
Mm-hmm.
I have no option to check myself out. I am theirs, and they're, I've signed my possessions away to them, and they tell me that this is what, and I'm like, well, I can't leave her alone.
Yeah.
You can't take me away from her because she's not safe on her own.
Right.
So they give me my phone back and allow me to call Joyce. I called Joyce 4 or 5 times.
I think that's so irresponsible. I think that is so irresponsible that they didn't understand this situation, that your mental break was over all of this stress. You're on an island other than Joyce there to help you, and saying, oh, well, we're just going to leave Jacqueline at home. This is the whole reason why you have a break, is because you're so worried about Jacqueline.
Which was making my break worse, which was escalating everything. I don't, in hindsight, I don't carry any ire toward them because they were outside the situation.
Yeah, but when you are a medical health professional, and I'm speaking because I worked in an ER trauma center where we had many behavioral health patients that came in, that is a no-brainer. When you have a person who has a diagnosis of dementia and Alzheimer's, everyone knows they are not to be left alone. So
everybody knows her there. I mean, she's got frequent flyer miles at that ER.
Oh my gosh. You might not be mad at them, but I'm mad at them. So that's all I'm saying is, come on, we've got to do better, medical community. We have to do better. This is going to continue if we don't help one another and be there for one another. And okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left. So I really want to get to, how it was when she was in the long-term care, what you did during that time. But then I want to get to our inspirational part of how you've worked through everything that's happened. So let's go to where you were able to now sort of help yourself and realize, I have to help myself to help her.
I got that was an experience of finding remembering who I was while I was at the psych ward. It was a process of meditation and fortunately a very spiritual and aware person in the psychiatrist who was the evaluator at the psych ward, who ended up letting me go after 2 nights there and sending me back home. Wow. But it was there's hours of discussion in that as well, and you've read all about it.
Yeah. But I think you just needed to get out of the situation for a minute and rest.
I needed to get out of my head.
Yeah.
I needed to get out of my head and back into my heart.
Yeah.
But you asked about what I did for her, what I tried to do for her while she was at the home, and there were some care quality issues at that home, and I ended up I had started out going twice a day, visiting her twice a day, taking the dog every time. I went for breakfast and dinner, and spent as much time with her as I can. When it became pretty evident that there were care issues and that the carers needed supervision, I added a third trip every day to that, and I would go in the middle of the night on a surprise visit. I ended up getting from the manager of facility, I got the front door code, so I didn't have to get buzzed in. I could walk in at any point in time and just pop in on them, on checking on them, caring for my wife. And there were some situations that I found were completely intolerable, and I had to take steps with the state to try to correct some of that. But I ended up making a habit very quickly of again, breakfast every day, dinner every day, date night once a week, where I would take her. I would Wednesdays I would take her out. Take her, get her dressed as nice as I could, take her out to dinner, take her. She's completely non-ambulatory at this point. She's in a wheelchair, so I would take her to a shopping mall just to push her around and buy her some dark chocolate, or take her. She used to love places like Home Goods and places of that nature where she could go in and look around at all the home decor. And she was crazy about doing the interior decorating at home. And I'd take her there and let her peruse and look around a little bit, just to get her out of that environment and take her out for a meal and just spend some time outside the stress and just let her try to feel some level of normalcy for a few hours, once a week.
I remember one post that you had talked about, and listeners, this is, if you don't cry, then you have no heart. But I'm saying this is the sweetest thing. So I remember she loved her pudding, right? Yes. And so Matthew would always make sure that she had her pudding. And I remember you saying that you had gone in the middle of the night. And of course, Sky, the faithful baby puppy that, I'm so, I just, dogs are just there and they feel and know. And I remember you said you went there in the middle of the night and you were playing records for her. You were playing some songs for her. And I think you had even managed to get her to dance a little bit.
A little bit.
Can I have some paper?
It was there were a few songs that really resonated with her. She was a jazz fiend, but it was her favorite thing in the world was Christmas music. And I've never been since my youth. I've never been a Christmas person at all. I embraced it for her because it brought her such joy. During the duration of her, not just during her illness, but during the 20 years we were together, Christmas, brought her great joy. But there was, I could sometimes if she was in the right mood, if she was, if she felt happy about my appearance and the dog made her smile and it was a good day, then yes, we could get some music going. And I could, you don't want to hear it, but I would sing along and serenade her with some of the music, and she would smile and she could close her eyes and wiggle in her chair a little bit. And it just, late in her life, the pudding became one of the only, her taste buds had eroded to the point where sweet was just about the only thing she could enjoy tasting.
Yeah.
And the pudding brought her joy, made her smile. And we could mix some meds into it and things of that nature. But that was, the last couple of months, that's almost the only thing she ate. But
it's just those little things that, once we accept, I think that's the big thing, when we accept when someone has that diagnosis. I remember before my grandmother passed, she was in a home, and like I said, I had a hard time visiting her, and it was Christmas, and I went, and she was in the dining area, and we were just sitting there. Now, my grandmother has been deaf since she was 40. And I think it's like a family thing. I wear hearing aids as well. And it started in her 20s and mine started in mine. And so she read lips. We didn't do sign language or anything like that. And so I remember going at Christmas and she had stopped recognizing me. She would get my sister and I confused. My sister has blonde hair as well. And it was Christmas Eve. And I went over and to see her. She recognized me. She knew who I was. And we were sitting there and she said, looked around at the decorations. And I said, well, it's Christmas Eve. And she said, oh, yeah, I know. And she says, I love this song. And I said, they're playing Christmas music. And she was just clear and there. And I remember going to my parents' house afterwards and said, hey, I went and saw grandma. And they're like, how was she? And I said, she was her from 10 years ago.
Those lucid moments are the biggest gift. They both fill your heart and break your heart because that's going to pass.
Yes.
But they are a moment to celebrate when they happen. There's no question about it.
Yes.
Such a beautiful instance.
Did she have those moments before she passed?
She did. She fell late in October of 19. I got a phone call at about 1 a.m. And again, it's the second phone call I've got. All I hear is her screaming in the background. And the nurse tells me that she had fallen. She had gotten up out of her wheelchair and tried to walk across the room a little bit. And the nurse was at the other end of the hallway and saw her walk out of the room. As soon as she saw her walking, she started running toward her, but then just boom, and she broke her hip. So surgery to repair the hip, and the doctor, the surgeon was very straightforward. He says, we can fix it. We both know she's never going to walk again. He says it was one of those things where we can fix it. We can have the surgery. It might add a few weeks to her life, but we all know we're very close. But she was in tremendous pain. So I'm like, fix it. Yes, we're gonna fix it.
Yeah.
After the surgery, though, she never really woke again.
Okay.
She had a few moments here and there, but she never really interacted again. She was very, very difficult. They might get her to eat a little bit. Again, probably it's going to be pudding or something like that, something sweet that they might get her awake enough to take a little bit of juice or a little bit of pudding, but that's going to be about it. But I was there. I stayed with her all day on Thanksgiving. I didn't go home at all. Sky stayed there with us. We made the day of it. They brought a special meal in for Thanksgiving and everything else. I had Christmas music playing the whole time, Bing Crosby and the ones that she really, really loved. And I was
Hey, jeez.
Hey.
Jeez.
Okay.
What is going on over there?
And almost the end of the day at Thanksgiving. It's Ohio. It's 6 or 7 o'clock at night. So it's pitch black out, in that time of year.
You really want that? You have no interest in any ball ever, and you have to get in a fight over that.
That's the only ball she can use.
Her eyes open, and I get
Her
this.
mouth only really fits around.
And at this point in time, Maureen, she weighs 70 or 80 pounds. So I get this face and this smile, but this smile is all of the smile that I remember. It's that full face, filled with joy smile, and I can see her eyes are a little roomy, but they're clear enough that she sees me and she knows who I am, and she smiles and she sings a couple of those words of the song along with me a little bit, and I'm smiling and I'm cracking and I'm bawling my eyes out, and she's just grinning and she's smiling, and it lasted seconds, but it was a full awareness of our relationship in that few seconds, and then she got quiet, and she said, "I'm going to go now."
Oh.
And I just said, I knew that this was coming, and she had a number of events over the course of the last couple of years where she had said, "I'm going to die today. It's time." She even had events where she had begged me to kill her, to end it for her.
Oh my gosh!
But this was Thanksgiving, and she just looked at me. She said, "I'm going to go now," and she went back to sleep. And she didn't die that night. She died, 3 weeks later. But she never woke up again. She was never cognizant of anything ever again. So essentially, she went that night. That was the last actual contact I had with her as a person was Thanksgiving night. She looked up at me with the brightest, most loving and recognition filled gaze, and that huge smile, and then she sung for a few minutes with me, and then she just calmed down and she said, "I'm going to go now," and she went back to sleep.
It's just it's just her soul, her saying, "I see you. I know what you've done. I love you for all that you've done, and we're good. We're okay." And this must have just been, I think it's a beautiful thing. And I know, it's easy for me to say, but the beautiful way that she acknowledged you and had that moment of clarity. And I know that feeling when my grandma was there and I could see her and she recognized me. I just, I'm speechless. I'm absolutely speechless with how that went and what a gift she left. Now, and I know we're way over time here, but one of the things I thought was really amazing that you did after was you then took a soul journey and you sold your everything and you got this RV and you took this. I loved it. I was cheering you on. I really was. I was like, look at him go do this soul journey with
I
Sky and his
I couldn't
kitty.
I couldn't stay in that house, Maureen. I couldn't stay in that house, and it was a 3,400 square foot house, and that woman never threw shit away.
Oh God.
So it was purging that house and minimizing and moving from that into a 90 square foot RV was a hell of a journey in and of itself. But Sky and Cinders and the time we spent on the road. I mean, my goal was to figure out one thing, to move beyond, not just move out, but move beyond the event, to find out who I am in the wake of all of this.
Yeah.
And I ended up realizing or falling into the creating. I'm sorry, I find the right adjective or the right word for it. But creating who I was in the wake of all of that, realizing that everything I had been through was forging me into whomever I needed to be for the next chapter and going forward in my life.
I love that. Listeners, do you hear that? Because, a lot of times, you're going to grieve this. You're going to grieve your loved one forever. This is not something you get over. This is not something that goes away. But what I love that Matthew is saying is, who am I now post phase? It's not like, okay, how do I just exist now that Jacqueline's gone? He said, why did this make me who I am, and who am I, and how do I do something really good with this? And I love that you just said that. So I wanted listeners to really hone in on that. And so you did this travel journey and you found yourself, because your blog was just so fun after, you'd go to the Grand Canyon and you were just doing these fun things. What'd you find out about yourself that makes you who you are today?
I found out more than anything else that fear, which had been a major motivator for me for the first 50 years of my life. Fear has no more power over me. I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of cats. I was afraid of wasps. I was afraid of heights. I was about the only common fear I didn't have was probably claustrophobia. But I had some level of every kind of fear and phobia you can imagine. And and in the wake of all of this, and I figured this out when I was at Badlands National Park in South Dakota. I had seen some other things and done some wonderful things before I got there, but that was the first national park I hit on my tour, and one of those that I had wanted to see my entire life. Hello, baby. I know. I'm sorry. You have fun coming, I promise. But just exploring Badlands and just going off on my own. You can't take the pets into the national parks. So I had to leave guys in the RV, and I was towing my motorcycle behind the RV, so I ride the motorcycle into the parks and tour like that. and I'm parked. Oh, baby. I know.
I'm sorry, Lola. We weren't supposed to go so far over. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up for Lola, but yeah. So you discovered that there's nothing to fear anymore because you've been through something so tough.
Yeah, there's everything I was afraid of went away in the realization that all fear does is make you afraid. It doesn't. It's like worry. My dad used to use the term borrowing trouble. Okay, you're thinking about shit you got no control over. So just be here. And I was in Colorado National Monument, which is this amazing canyon, one of the favorite things I saw on my entire trip. And I'm standing on these big blades out in the canyon where I've crossed these little narrow. I've taken a couple of jumps, and I'm standing. I'm 400 feet up, and I'm on a 18-inch wide blade of rock, and I'm looking, and it's cool. And I can't imagine, 2 years earlier, I couldn't have gotten near the edge of that, let alone gone out on the fin and walked along and just the idea of fear and of trepidation and nervousness just didn't exist anymore.
So you'd say Jacqueline left you with mindfulness and with the now belief that life is to be lived, not to be feared.
Oh, absolutely. And with the commitment at some point in time, and I've discussed this with you, to write that freaking book.
Yes.
It's a difficult, as you can imagine, that's a difficult thing to delve into and to relive as you're trying to put some sort of narrative around it. But there's 300 pages just in the blog itself.
Yes.
To filter through and turn into something that might be of service to people, and that's something that I need to do as well.
Oh my gosh. And I'm telling you, you have to do it because
I didn't want to.
The thing that I've learned now, and I'm, as you and I talked about offline at this moment, I'm in the last moments I have with Brody, and my books are about my dogs, and I'm writing the third book, which is ironically going to be something pertaining to fear. And it really is healing. It's when you write that stuff, you feel the stuff again and it brings it up, but then it's this release of, okay, I brought it up and I let it go. And this is something I can give to others. And someone, whoever it is going to pick up that book and they're going to need it. And now that I've done it, the people and the responses that people have said, oh, your book changed my life. Your book did everything for me. Or I went through the same exact thing. You and I are exactly alike. It is the most healing and rewarding thing, Matthew. And I think you have to get that book written. But in the meantime, where can they find your blog to read more about your journey and Jacqueline?
It's I canceled the original domain name that I had for it, which was savingjacqueline.com.
Yeah.
And for a couple of reasons. Obviously, the title was something that wasn't achieved. But it's all just under my name. It's MatthewJarrett.net, and you can access it that way. It's a WordPress site, and it was something that I was doing something else with it before I repurposed it into the whole Saving Jacqueline, so that you can prior to 2017 when I made that conversion, there's some other stuff prior to that, but it's all linked in.
I'll have that on your episode as well, so everyone can go right to that and look that up. So as we close up today and we leave, I want to know, I'm not going to do the normal thing that I do about talking to your younger self or the Take My Money episode. I'm going to do something a little different. And I want you to give us 3 things that someone who is in your situation, taking care of someone and going through such a traumatic thing. And I think Alzheimer's it's different than a physical like cancer. I think it's such a different thing because your loved one has left you before they left you. And I'm going to say that over and over, having been a nurse in a unit with Alzheimer's patients and
That's a
having
nice
my
way to
own
say it.
experiences with
They've
it. So
left you
let's
before
have
they left.
you give 3 things, your 3 top things to give someone with a loved one with Alzheimer's, who is a caregiver going through what you did.
The most important thing, excuse me, and if this is my focus in the narrative, is self-care. You cannot drive a car with an empty gas tank. Okay, if you have nothing of yourself to give,
from you.
if you are
stole that from
killing
you
yourself,
completely.
you're of no service to the person that you're sacrificing yourself for.
Yes.
Self-sacrifice sounds all very noble and very, very romantic and everything else, but it's the worst possible way to approach caregiving. I don't ever cancer patient or whatever, but nothing. And I don't want to put myself on a pedestal because I'm the last person who thinks that I did anything extraordinary. But I don't believe there's anything that will be more traumatic to a caregiver than trying to care for an Alzheimer's patient. I can't imagine. I mean, our family cared for my dad in his cancer, and matter of fact, tomorrow is the 40th anniversary of his death. But I've been through cancer caregiving. I've had friends who've been through the breast cancer diagnosis and who have come out the other side of it, and some who have not.
Yeah.
All of that is horrible and traumatic and terrifying, but the idea of we think about how traumatic it is for the person who is undergoing this illness, the person who is suffering from Alzheimer's, and when they have a lucid moment, it's not always a thing of beauty, because this is a person with a 160 IQ waking up for a few minutes and realizing that she's probably that she's lost her mind, that the one thing she could rely on for her life has gone from her. And those lucid moments are the most horrible thing in the world to watch.
Yeah.
But if you don't take care of yourself, if you're not eating right, if you're not sleeping, I used to post on the blog all the time about, I was wearing a Fitbit at the time, and I was averaging 27 or 28 minutes of deep sleep a night.
No.
For months, and I'd have 2.5 hours of light sleep and minutes of deep sleep and hours of wakefulness, because I could not let myself shut down enough because I couldn't trust that she was okay.
Yeah, you were on edge all the time, waiting for the next thing, next thing that was coming. So self-care. And what's our second one?
Our second is forgiveness. Because you're going to judge yourself. You're going to judge everyone who interacts with her. You're going to judge her. To her in my context, but you're whomever you're caring for.
Yeah.
It's going to be difficult to escape anger, both at yourself and at the situation you're in. And yes, you're going to get angry at them because they're going to do horrible things, which is completely outside their personality. And it's going to catch you off guard, and you're going to have to do something. They're going to be in public, and they're going to say something which is incredibly inappropriate, or they're going to accuse you of kidnapping them when you're walking through Meijer shopping for groceries. Okay, there are going to be moments and things that they'll do which are going to make you furious. Okay,
Yeah.
and I'm not talking about forgiving them. I'm talking about forgiving yourself for feeling that. Okay, yes, it's easy to forgive them
Yeah.
after the moment, after the heat of the moment, because you understand what they're going through. It's not easy to forgive yourself for feeling that anger,
reacting,
which is an entirely natural and human response. But when you get caught up in judging yourself like that, then you start that downward spiral, and you put yourself in a situation which is completely untenable for your own sanity.
And I think to remember you're doing the best that you can. I mean,
Yeah,
that's all you can do is just do the best that you can in the moment, and have that mercy on yourself and say, this is not something I've ever dealt with before, and I'm just taking it moment by moment. And that'll really, I think, ease the future view of, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Because that's that anxiety and worry. It's stay in those moments and sing those songs and give them the pudding and just stay in those moments of joy and take the moments of joy as they come.
absolutely. You have to be able to smile yourself.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to realize that there's still love and joy in life.
And what's your last one? What's number 3?
My last one is those moments of love and joy. Okay, just
Yeah.
when they come across, don't think, oh great, here's another smile that I have to live past. Okay, because again, an easy pattern to fall into. I'm afraid to feel happy right now because I know that there's unhappiness moments around the corner. When those smiles happen, when those moments of joy happen, um, don't live in fear of them, because I did.
Yeah.
Just take the smiles and share the kisses. If someone flips her switch and all of a sudden she's a 16-year-old out on her first date, and she's feeling, frisky and romantic with you, then by God, let her feel it. Let her be happy, and be happy for her happiness.
Yeah.
You have to. It's so easy to be afraid of those moments, but they are a gift beyond compensation.
And I know from caretaking the patients that I had, some of the other nurses were like trying to bring them back to reality. And I was like, why? Why do you want to force them back? So I had a beautiful lady, and she would always say that my husband and my kids are going to be home and I got to make dinner, or I've got to, I got to get everything ready. And because it is more of a long-term memory, they lose their short-term. And I would bring her, a basket of laundry, and I'd say, okay, we'll get the laundry done before they get home. And she would just be so happy to be, folding the laundry. And don't try to make them come into the
No, no, no.
reality,
Live,
right?
live in and embrace their illusions as much as you can, because that's where their mind is. That's where their happiness is.
I love that. Embrace their illusions. Oh, I love that so
I
much.
like
Well,
that.
thank you so much, Matthew. I could do this for
embrace
2
their
hours
illusion.
with
Oh, I
you.
know. I
I
apologize that we ran so far over.
Don't worry. We had a lot to cover. We had a lot to get in, and I didn't want to make it, I didn't want to cut off some of these really key moments that you had, but you're such an inspiration to all of the listeners. And listeners, I hope you really, really get something from this, and you can look at Matthew and say, he went through this really traumatic thing, but he now embraces the joy that he had with his wife, and those last parting moments that she gave him of just clarity, saying, I see you, I love you, and I appreciate you. And then he chose to continue living his life. And he's also a very talented woodworker, I have to say. He
Thank
makes
you.
beautiful, beautiful furniture. So go check him out at matthewjarrett.net, and you'll get some more information. And hopefully do you have pictures and stuff up on that blog?
Just the small. There is just what I shared on the blog itself.
Okay.
Not things from the travel area. That's all via the Facebook and everything.
Okay.
But yeah, it's in that is just a just an exploration of our journey together.
Okay. Well, go connect with him on Facebook as well, because it was really fun watching his journey as it happened. And I felt so privileged to be a part of that and to gain a friendship out of it and to now have him as a guest on the podcast. So I'm so happy that I know you. I'm so honored that our souls connected.
And I thank you for that. That is 100% mutual.
I love it. So guys, if you want to get a hold of him, you can again go to Facebook. You can also comment on the podcast or on my Facebook. Make sure you connect with me, Twitter, LinkedIn, all those places. And if you are looking for life coaching, of course, I'm at lifecoachmaureen.com. And if you are going through, a difficult time, you have anxiety, those are some of the things that I can help with. But it's very, very important, as you heard, Matthew really only had Joyce, who was really the only support system that he had. And I think you can hear how it ended up overwhelming him because of the lack of people understanding the support that you need. So if you are a caretaker, support groups, the medical team, social workers, family, friends, anyone who will listen, reach out, because you cannot do it alone. And that's the one most important thing that I take away is we're a village, and whether it's raising children or helping take care of our ill or even our parents, I think it's a very important thing that we're here to help each other. So thank you all and take care. And until I see and hear from you guys next time, till we meet again, be well, be healthy, and most of all, be happy. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the I Never Knew podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring and educational, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and spread the word. The more people that join the Inc. community, the more it can develop and influence others as we work together for a healthier and brighter future. Until next time.